Previously on the Bleach Brothers podcast.
You're known primarily in the Pacific Northwest on Twitter and also on local radio and some of that sort of stuff as Jake the Hater, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's among many other nicknames. Yeah, that's my main nickname up here that
You've
is
got
from.
The main two that you have are Jake the Hater and Jake the Tailgater. And right. We'll get into Tailgater here in a minute. But how did you get this moniker? How did you become Jake the Hater? Tell me the story.
Okay, so actually this was given to me from a fan. I call him Kendall Fire. We used to work together. His name's Kendall, and we worked in women's shoes at the time. And a lot of my friends, friends support each other. And so when I was doing guest radio up here for ESPN and Fox Sports and stuff like that, and I would go on the air and just give my take on things. And one day he actually called into the show when I was on. And he goes, "Hey, can I just get into it with Jake the Hater?" And everybody's like, "Oh," and that was new, right? I wasn't called that at the time.
Right.
And I answered him. I said, "Yeah, what's up?" He goes, "I've never heard you talk about the teams you like. I only hear you talk about the teams you hate." Now the thing about it is I have a ranking, but one of my number one teams is the Oregon Ducks, and I live right near them. And I have a lot of personal, deep-seated hate that we can get into one time about why. And there's a lot of things. I'm not one of those people that just hates a team for no reason. Like, that, Brian. I'm really into it. And I actually have some, legitimate personal reasons for hating them, and then also sports-related. So it just turned into where he called me the hater and called me out. And it was funny because fans that listen to me never knew the teams I liked. They only knew of the teams because I'm the opposite, I guess. I only talk about who I hate. For example, I have an ongoing war with everybody back home. I hate the Golden Knights. I legitimately hate that whole team. I've started the hashtag FTGK for fuck the Golden Knights. Every day they play, I post it. And it's turned into a thing where it's like, I get into it with a lot of people, and it's fun. And the whole hater things, I guess, started as a joke, and then it just grew into itself. And at first I hated it. I was like, I hated being a hater, right? And
it's not that common of a moniker. You kind of almost wonder, is this something that you're taking on that you really don't want to, I would imagine?
Well, the thing I was afraid of is, am I going to have to be a character? And I realized at the end of the day, I wasn't really being a character. I was being myself. And but I also didn't want to envelop, because this. A lot of people know I'm a really nice guy. I'm very friendly. I'm very helpful.
Fuck you are.
Well, not to you, but everybody else.
Shut your Aaron Yap. You are not a nice guy. You are cordial at best.
Okay,
cordial
that's fine. That's what I meant. That's what I thought. That's what I thought being nice was. B word. All right, but side note, no, you know me though. I didn't want to turn into where there's certain people that just turn it on all the time when it's like a thing they have to do, right? Like the tailgater, for example, is that's a cooking thing, and that just became just a joke off the name, a riff off the hater. But I also realized why are you going to hate on something and go against something that has helped get you to the level you are, right? And I'm not saying I'm famous, but it's more noticeable, right? People know, last year, I don't know if you were aware, there was a basketball player up here, a Trailblazer, Evan Turner. I was supposed to actually box him for charity. Me and him got into it, and I'll find the article and post it to our socials. But yeah, it was on NBA TV. It was on everything. I talked crap on him on Twitter, and you know me, I don't back down. And I think he was expecting me to be like, "Oh, I'm sorry," or just ignore him. And yeah, for 2 hours, me and him went back and forth, and it turned into such a big deal because I was on the radio and on TV, and he's doing this, where we actually tried to line it up with the Blazers for us to do a charity fight. And I was gonna get whooped. The guy's like 6'7" and a professional athlete. Yeah, that's fine. But here's the thing: I would have had fun with it, and I would do anything for charity. Hence, I'd raise some money for some kids, or whatever, whoever needs it, for that. But it didn't happen. Now, do I enjoy all the time having to be a hater? No. Do I turn it on? No. But when I hate something, I go full bore. Legitimately, I'm watching the Knights game right now, right? Right. I hate that team with a passion. Everybody's like, "Well, why, Jake? You're from there." One, you don't put slut dust on a hockey jersey. Okay, you don't put glitter on a hockey jersey. That's a problem. Two, this type of person. What type of man still is so in love with his high school and wears his high school ring as a billionaire adult? They're called the Golden Knights because his high school was the Knights. You had so many other cool names you could have done in Las Vegas. You chose that. Their fan base is the worst and uneducated hockey fans I've ever met. They don't even know what icing is.
Oh, man, you're going to ruffle a bunch of feathers
for
some of our fans here.
That's the point. And then the fourth thing is, well, they're easily riled, which is great. I mean, I post up a meme, like, what was it tonight? Fucketh thy golden knights or whatever, of a knight yelling that, and like everybody's like going off. But I mean, the other thing is, though, is like the argument I have, and I'm not trying to get into sports, because me and you know a lot, and we talk sports a lot, and we said we wouldn't do this, but name an expansion team, Brian, since the 80s that hasn't been good, that has been a new franchise. And there's two reasons for that. One, when you own a business.
Like, that has not been good, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Nope. I deny that. Their first year in season.
They made the playoffs.
They made it far in the playoffs. Now, here's my point.
Okay.
Is, as a business, the NFL, NHL, whoever it be, why would you want to create another Browns the first year out? It's going to fail miserably. It doesn't matter if you're only good for one season. At least you're good. And the reason you are is you get higher up in the draft. You also usually get to pull players from other teams that are good. The Golden Knights got to pull Fleury as their goalie, one of the greatest goalies in hockey right now. They get him right out the gate. Of course you're going to be good. Your goalie's going to defend almost everything. I mean, the guy's a beast. I'll admit that. When he was on the Penguins when they won the championship, yeah, he's great. That's another problem I have, is the arrogance, because Vegas is the type of city, B-word, when they don't like something, they blow up a building. Okay?
Yeah,
when this team is bad, I am afraid that they are going to just blow it up and nobody's going to be a fan, just like the Coyotes of Phoenix. Nobody goes to those games. When they're bad, it's going to be interesting to see how this team is when they're bad. Because they've only been good and shown success. Like, I heard the stupidest stat on TV the other day. They're like, oh, you know, they've been to the playoffs every year. They've been in existence like 3 years, you idiot.
So I want to interrupt you here. So obviously you have a strong distaste for the Vegas Golden Knights, right?
Hatred, yes.
And so you're a Chicago Blackhawks fan. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's in hockey. Now, your team recently changed its name in the NFL, and I don't know if it's your team because there are rules as you can change teams if significant things happen. But you used to be the former name of the Washington football team. You used to be their fan, right? And this is where you and I, because I'm a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan, and so the Washington football team. The Washington football team is not. And so for me, I hate all NFC East teams in the NFL. But the story of how I became a Dallas Cowboys fan in the state of Nevada is actually pretty unique. And it all has to do with the love that my grandmother had for Troy Aikman's butt. Okay, I swear to God, that's really what it is. And so what happened is on Thanksgiving, when I was a kid, my family, my dad's side of the family is Native American. Okay, their lineage goes through the Hunkpapa Sioux tribe out of North Dakota, and so we celebrate Native American heritage. We absolutely love a lot to do with the Native Americans. And on this particular Thanksgiving, the Dallas Cowboys were facing, at the time, they were known as the Washington Redskins, and so the white women, if you will, so my mom, my grandmother, my aunt were in the kitchen, and all the guys were in the living room watching the game. And here I was, this little twerp, probably 5 or 6 years old or whatever I was at the time. And I'm going between the living room, where I don't really know what's going on the television, and I'm going between the kitchen. And you know me, dude, I love my food, and I'm smelling good Thanksgiving food, right?
Right.
And so I'm bouncing between, and my grandma says, Brian, who do you want to win? And I knew that everybody in the living room was rooting for the Redskins. And so I said, well, I want them to win. And my grandma goes, Brian, I will tell you this right now. If you want to have Thanksgiving food, you will root for the Dallas Cowboys. And so I said, okay, right? And so from that moment on, I became a Dallas Cowboys fan. And I had really no clue as to why until about 10 years ago. Before my grandma passed away, and we were watching a Cowboys football game, and Tony Romo was the quarterback at the time. And my grandma looks right at me and dead ass says, I really miss Troy Aikman's butt.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I became a Dallas Cowboys fan because of my grandma's love for Troy Aikman's butt. However, I didn't know that. But Here's where I want to transition this conversation.
Well,
I have teams.
Okay.
Well, no. Go ahead, because I'm going to transition away from it. So if you got something to add to it, go ahead.
The funny thing is I actually have a love for, or I did, of the Redskins because of my grandma.
Oh, really?
And
see, I didn't know that.
hatred of the Cowboys from my grandpa. So my grandma on my dad's side and my grandpa on my mom's side. So, for instance, I'm a third generation American. So my dad's mom was German and they were Hungarians. And they came over, and she didn't really speak a lick English, right? And I guess when she came over to America, she was in D.C. and took a bus and didn't really speak very well, and was all over town and got lost and got out and wandered into the Redskins Stadium.
Oh, really?
And didn't know where to go, and the affiliates working there or whatever like helped her out and helped her find her way and gave her, I guess, like, some gear or something and talked to her. And so she fell in love with the team because they helped her, become an American, essentially. And so my grandma would cry when the Redskins fight song was on, Hail to the Redskins. And growing up,
I would probably cry if that went on too.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
Well, it's better in the eyes of the Texas, but whatever. So you remember, though, like in my house, we had the giant Redskin mural painted on the wall.
I did,
you would rub the chin when they scored a touchdown. Well, when I was 4 years old, my family is also Native American, partly, and we're Blackfoot. And in my family, they're designated speakers. And surprise, surprise, Brian, I think you will know I am that one for my family. So I used to tell all the stories at the dinner table and everything for, my family. Mm-hmm. And so my papa, I think, saw this as a moment to try to take advantage of the situation. So when I was 4 years old for Christmas, he knew I was a Skins fan because my family was, and he bought me a Cowboy shirt. And my dad was not very happy about this.
Good man. And I've met your grandpa, by the way, too.
Oh, yeah.
And I love the man specifically for that reason.
And he handed me the shirt. I opened it, and I've never been ungrateful for anything in my life, but I blew my nose in it, and I handed him back this Cowboy shirt. And from that day forward, he realized I was never going to change, and I was a Redskin for life. Now that they are not, I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess it's going to come down to...
I figured you're kind of in limbo.
I am. I mean, it's here's the thing. I'm not so attached to the name where it's like, oh, God, am I upset they're changing it? Yeah, I mean, that's politics. I don't care. Football has changed a lot, but essentially it's just, it's not the same team, in my opinion. I had a lot of gear. I had... the sim. I'm not like, if they're not that, I'm never going to be a fan. I've told you that. I'm sort of in limbo right now. But I mean, if they come out with a really bad name, and I mean, it's just atrocious. It's like, am I even going to care? Because that's the thing I've had a lot of people ask me, am I going to be a fan of a new team? Am I going to be a fan of their team? Am I going to even, because I haven't even watched football in a while. And, it's not just because of that. There's just multiple reasons, but I think the only name out of the 5 they've announced that they might do that I'd be really happy with is the Hogs. Because one, you know me, I'm a big fan of pigs.
It salutes the offensive line that it had.
But I have a pig tattoo. Pork's my favorite meat. I grew up raising pigs. It's just, there's a lot that would go to that with me. I'm a big fan of the animal itself. I don't know what's gonna happen. The other thing is like, I think if I had to change B-word, I would go to an AFC team.
I think that's pretty rational. I do, because there's so much animosity between the NFC, in teams, and I'll get into this here in just a second because this is where I was going to transition to as well. But I do think that if to just share your view here and not to cut you off, to share your view here, I think if I had to switch football teams for one reason or another, I'd have to go to the other conference. I think because I've talked so much shit about the conference that the Cowboys are in, that I'd have to go to another conference.
Now, you also know this, though, too, and let me ask you this question. So, because we've talked about this in extent off the show about, the rules of how you can technically be a fan, and, we agree and disagree with certain parts of it.
Yeah.
What do you feel about the people that are fans of a player and follow the player?
I can't stand it. Like, I like players. So, for instance, I liked Peyton Manning. I thought Peyton Manning was just an absolute great quarterback. I think that he was really, really good at his craft. And is he the best quarterback ever? No. But I do think that he was good, and he was a good I don't want to say role model because you never know what somebody's skeletons are in the closet, but he was a good face of the NFL. I'll put it that way. And so I like him. I also like Troy Polamalu. He was a really cool guy to watch in his career. So I like players, but I think you almost have to, if you're going to be a fan, you're either a fan of the league or you're a fan of the team. And I really have a hard time with those that are a fan of the league, because what are you risking? What exactly happens if a team that you follow loses? Nothing, because you follow the player, in my opinion. Now, if you follow the team, you win as the team or you lose as the team. And the glory, if and when you ever get to the championship, Cowboys, you haven't been to the championship in most of my life. It just doesn't. I don't feel like you get as much back as a fan if you're just a fan of a player. Does that make sense?
No, it does, because I get in this argument a lot with people, essentially because they follow Tom Brady, right? That's the big example for me, is
right.
Or LeBron James,
right.
Whatever team he's on, I'm a fan of. Because I've only almost bought
like my friend Angela.
Right, I've almost.
My friend Angela follows LeBron.
Okay, yeah, and so they were a Heat fan, now they're a Laker fan, they're a Cavaliers fan, and then wherever he goes next, if he goes anywhere, they'll be a fan of that team.
Right.
I have a lot of Brady friends like that. I've only had one time in my life where I almost bought another jersey for another football team, and I was a huge Chad Johnson or Chad Ochocinco fan.
Oh, Ochocinco, yeah.
But the other thing is, I just liked the Bengals jersey. I always thought it was fitting, because when they were in crime all the time,
I think it's cool.
They're already in orange, so they're already ready to go to their next job if they go to jail. But two, you remember, it was like the jail Blazers. They were always in trouble. But two, I liked the Bengals jerseys. I've always liked him. I liked him when he was a Beaver up here at Oregon State. I liked, because I love college football too. I follow a lot of college football. I've always liked it a little more than pro football. I think there's more to gain and lose. It's a lot more fun to watch. I think they try harder because their end goal is to get somewhere else instead of just get paid. If that makes sense,
right? Yeah, no, it does.
And I've only traded teams once in my life, and that's
I know you traded your teams as a part of your marriage. That was a deal.
Yeah, but also I was smart and I made a counter trade. So I got something, and it wasn't just me gave up. So I'm going to get into this story if you're cool with it, just for a second.
No, go ahead. That way
my wife's from New York. She's Staten Island, New York, and she's a huge New York Mets fan. And when we first met, which was a side story, you know how I know a lot of people, she went to work because we were dating long distance when she was in Vegas, and we were friends for like 10 years. And she went to her boss and's like, "Oh, I'm dating this guy." And he's like, "Oh, what's his name?" She goes, "Jake Medosick." And there's not a lot of Medosicks, as I said. Everybody in the country with that name's related to me. She showed him a picture. She goes, "Yeah, I used to coach that guy in baseball. Great baseball player." So she calls me and she goes, "Of course you know somebody." Well, I didn't realize how big of a baseball fan my wife was. So when she came up here, she bought us tickets to go watch the Mets versus the Mariners for 3 games, right? So she paid for the tickets, paid for everything, paid for the hotel. Was going to take me. I've never been to a pro baseball game. I was very excited. I mean, that's the hard part growing in Vegas, right? You get to bet on every team, but you never got to go to teams because they didn't have them. And I think that's one thing that I sort of hate. I never got to see anything. So we go to Seattle, and on the bed is some New York Mets gear. And I just looked at her and laughed. I said, "No," because I was a Braves fan.
Because at the time, weren't you a Braves fan?
I was a huge Braves fan because I didn't know if you knew this about me. My uncle was the coach of UNLV baseball, and he's the winningest coach in college history. And he coached Greg Maddux.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. That's why I was, groomed as a pitcher. He coached Greg Maddux. So I got to meet Greg Maddux, meet his mom and stuff. So he was my hero growing up, right? And that's when the Braves were the Buckingham Palace of pitching. They had John Smoltz, they had Tom Glavine, they had Maddux. They were going to the World Series all the time. And the other thing is the funny thing, and you know this, I'm a Blackhawks fan, right? I was always a fan of Indian teams, and I think it's because you get that thing ingrained in you. Oh, I like that logo, and so I just followed teams like that. When I was 3, I started watching sports pretty young, and so I looked at my wife. I said, "Absolutely not." And she's like, "Well, I'm a Mets fan, so you should be too." And so I said, "Well, I'll make you a deal." And she's like, "What's that?" I was like, "Well, she was a New York Giants fan at the time, another NFC East team." I said, "I'll trade you. I will be a Mets fan if you become a Redskin fan." So she did, and it worked out way better for me because the Mets went to World Series and the Giants. And it worked out bad for her because the Redskins have been terrible forever. We did that, but the cool part was we go to the game, right? And we're sitting there, and her favorite player was Wright, who is the third baseman. And she's like, "Oh, it's his birthday today." And then she's like naming all these stats. And I've never been so turned on in my life, like watching her, like how much she enjoyed baseball, but just knowing so much more than I did about a sport that I grew up playing and loved.
That's
And
cool.
so I think it was a good trade. It worked out really well. Like I really took on the Mets, and I think I may have overcompensated a bit because I had a hard time, talking because my brother's still a Braves fan and he still gives me hell for it. Like, how dare you? Because that's almost an unsacred rule, right? You don't trade teams. But also, my wife knows this about me, and she's admitted this. Seeing how much of a hater I am, she goes, "I am so happy I'm not a Cowboys fan or anything." She goes, "Because I don't think our marriage would have lasted." Because
It's really true. I mean,
deep. Yeah.
see, and you and I've been such great friends because we've been able to actually be rivals in so many different things, but also really appreciate the other's perspective. And one of the things that you did is you lived in Las Vegas primarily, or at least in the area primarily growing up,
Right.
with a detour in northern Nevada for some college, and then you moved up to the Pacific Northwest, right? And
Right.
I've spent the vast majority of my life in northern Nevada. However, I did spend quite a lot of time in southern Nevada as well. And so for me, I have a really hard time with regional fans, right? And I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about here, but regional fans in my area are like the Bay
The
Area
Niners,
fans in
yeah.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Niners fans, Raiders fans, and like Golden State Warriors fans. Um, Angela, if you're listening to this, you're my homie and everything, but I do
Boo.
have a hard time with those bandwagoner
Boo you.
Giants fans, the San Francisco Giants fans. And the reason why is because I feel like when things, unlike, let me back up.
Do you
I
mean like
feel
Fairweather
like
fans?
yeah, I feel like there's
Like,
more fair weather fans. So, like, right now, you talked about the Golden Knights, right? And the Golden Knights are having success. And so there's a lot of bandwagoner Golden Knights fans that are out there. Like, I know some diehard fans, and they will stick with the Golden Knights regardless. But I think for the most part, that there's a lot of bandwagoner fans that are out there. And so I find that regionally. So, for instance, the Golden State Warriors have had some success in the NBA in the last decade.
and all of a
done
sudden
really,
they showed
really
up
well.
out of nowhere. Yeah.
Right. Where were these fans like back in the early 90s? Like they weren't there, right? And then like the San Francisco Giants, I mean, I candidly, they were one of the first baseball teams that I liked, although I've never officially chosen a team in the MLB. They were one of the first teams that I liked because there was so Matt Williams was their third baseman for quite a long time, and he graduated from Carson High School, and growing up in Carson City, like that was near me. You know what I mean? That was a real life experience being close to a player, and so that's kind of why I was a fan or quasi fan of the San Francisco Giants. But the 49ers, oh my man, like my dad is a 49ers fan, and he, if it's going badly, he doesn't watch. If they're doing well, he'll watch it, right? And so I'm not criticizing my dad, but I feel like that mentality in sports is so huge that people will be a fair weather fan. And so I hate Bay Area teams, but I also hate the fair weather Bay Area fans. Like that just drives me nuts.
Same here.
And
So
I imagine you have plenty of that in the Pacific Northwest.
well, yeah, the joke I used to always say about Duck fans, one of the teams I hate is they're just like the animal. They're fair weather. They fly south to the SEC where real football is when it's going bad for them, and then they come back when it's good and nice and sunny. I mean,
Right.
it's a perfect joke, right? But the other thing is like I used to say this about Patriots fans, right? Like, how
Right.
dare they all of a sudden show up? But the one thing I had to realize, is that, I don't live on the East Coast. And when I started meeting a lot of people from the Boston area and stuff, I realized that fan base is really diehard. You just don't see it over here. But I totally agree with you when it's closer to home. Because I have a lot of friends that are San Francisco Giant fans. And when they're not, like it's the one of those sports, and I think it is because baseball has it's a long season. Like I'll admit it, I love baseball, but I watch opening and then I watch playoffs, and I sort of fall in that lull in the middle because
Right.
you're playing 3-game series every night. It's like, oh, they lost 3 games, oh, it's sad, but then you're like, okay, it's not like football where it's 17. You lose 3 games, you could be out, right? You lose 3 games in baseball, oh, you still got 161 left, so.
Right. Exactly.
But the difference is like I'll talk to them, and if they're just not even making it anywhere, like, oh yeah, I haven't watched them in a couple years. How are they doing? And you just look at them like, how do you call yourself a fan? Like, I mean, I've had moments where life has happened and I haven't paid attention to as much, But as you were saying, like, we like rival teams, and I mean, we've kept it interesting too because we have our ongoing bet every year, which we always either pay each other or roll it over. And you know what I mean? Like, essentially, like, if the Cowboys win, I pay you, and then double or nothing, and we've done that forever, and it makes it more fun and
that's been going on for
interesting.
years.
But I totally agree with you. The Fayweather fans really just piss me off, and I mean, because I'd rather do this. I'd rather just not even be a fan. Hence why I said I'm not really paying attention to the Washington football team, because I'm not going to be that fan. Like, I was a diehard Skins fan for life, and you knew that even through thick and thin. I always was. We'd talk about it. But I'm not going to be a fan that just comes around when they're good, and I can't stand that either, like you.
Well, and this goes back into that. Are you a fan of the player or fan of the team? I think if you're a fan of the team, you're a fan thick or thin, and you have the reaction, positive or negative, regardless of the outcome, right? And if you're not a fan of a team, I think you can be a fan of the league by saying, wow, that was a really competitive game or match or whatever the title of it is, and you can enjoy the entertainment factor of it. But I don't think that, I think that traditional fans of a team that are actually winning, that are invested in the team, regardless of the sport, have the ability to enjoy the championship or the medal or the trophy or whatever they're competing for. They have the ability to enjoy that so much more because they've been along for the ride. You know what I mean? And if they haven't been along for the ride, they haven't really earned their stripes in enjoying the championship. For more Bleach Brothers content, follow us on our socials at Bleach Bros Pod and subscribe to our YouTube channel.